Let me ask you about Canada, which is our second largest trading partner. The president increased tariffs to 35%. It applies, though, to just about 10% of what Canada sells here. Why bother to do this now in the middle of negotiations?
So I would say, first of all, Canada is subject to 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum, 25% tariffs on autos, and again, the 35% tariff on goods that don't follow the rules of USMCA. And early on, the president imposed a 25% tariff on Canada, and that was really about fentanyl and border issues, right? It's a separate regime from the reciprocal tariff. And what did Canada do in response? They talked about helping at the border, and I'm not the drug czar or anything. But what I do know, as the trade guy, is that Canada retaliated. The only other country in the world who retaliated on tariffs was the Chinese. And so if the president's going to take an action and the Canadians retaliate, the United States needs to maintain the integrity of our action, the effectiveness, so we have to go up to.
You're talking about the things that the former Prime Minister Trudeau put in place, not the current Prime Minister.
And are still in place.
They're still in place, but
right.
The current Prime Minister has held off largely on retaliation here. That's the guy you're negotiating with and his team. So what's the strategy here? And aren't you worried that this will hurt the broader free trade deal if you truly do want to renegotiate it next year?
Well, the president's view with every country, whether it's Canada or Mexico, and regardless of the kind of trade agreement we have in place, is that the net result of the trading system, whether it's our WTO agreements or our existing trade agreements, the net result has been that a lot of the manufacturing has gone overseas. And when that's the net result, you can't continue with that system. So, I'm not concerned that it's going to complicate things with Canada. Our view is the president is trying to fix the terms of trade with Canada, and if there's a way to a deal, we'll find it. And if it's not, we'll have the tariff levels that we have.
Canada is once again in Trump's trade crosshairs. But is this a bold negotiating tactic or a dangerous gamble? The White House just slapped a 35% tariff on select Canadian goods on top of the already punishing 50% steel and aluminum tariffs and 25% auto tariffs. The reasoning? Officials frame it as protecting American manufacturing and punishing retaliation, but critics say it's playing chicken with one of our most reliable trade partners. Canada's past pushback mirrored China's, and now, with talks to renegotiate the USMCA looming next year, will this brinkmanship strengthen America's hand or poison the well? Are we safeguarding U.S. jobs or driving prices higher for everyday Americans? And here's the bigger question. If this is how we treat Canada, what message does it send to the rest of the world? Stay tuned, because the next move could redefine the entire North American trade game.
Breaking news coming into the Situation Room right now. President Trump is announcing that he's extending the tariff deadline for Mexico for another 90 days, set to expire tomorrow. CNN's chief national affairs correspondent Jeff Zeleny is back with us. So what more is the president saying?
Well, if we are learning that the president is giving Mexico more time, he had a telephone call this morning with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, and in that conversation, he's allowing 90 more days for Mexico to reach a deal. He just announced this moments ago on Truth Social, his social media account. Let's take a look at this. He explains, he said, we agreed to extend for a 90-day period the exact same deal as we had for the last short period of time, namely that Mexico will continue to pay a 25% fentanyl tariff, 25% tariff on cars, and 50% tariff on steel, aluminum, copper. Additionally, he says, Mexico has agreed to immediately terminate its non-tariff trade barriers, of which there were many, he says. We'll be talking to Mexico over the next 90 days with the goal of signing a trade deal somewhere within the 90-day period of time or longer. So if the bottom line to all of this is that the president has shown his flexibility when he has a conversation and a relationship with a leader. His relationship with President Sheinbaum is improving and growing. And he said the difference between Mexico, why he's giving them more time, is because of the unique circumstances at the border, the shared assets of the border, et cetera. The question I have here now, and we don't know the answer to it yet, is will Canada also be given an extension separately? As of now, it does not look like is so, but we've seen so many times during these last 6 months, the president has been flexible on these tariff deadlines.
Well, when it comes to Canada, President Trump keeps saying that because Canada has now announced it's set to recognize a Palestinian state, the U.S. isn't going to make a trade deal with it.
He has said that. So as of now, the deadline is tomorrow. But again, we've seen his flexibility before. We'll just have to wait and see.
Let's get interesting. The U.S. keeps pointing fingers at Canada over fentanyl Even though there's no evidence they're bringing any in, it's excuse after excuse, and now Ottawa's had enough. When Canadian Minister Dominic LeBlanc was pressed by American media, why not just drop the retaliatory tariffs? Trudeau did it before. Make us feel good here. He stayed cool, but firm. LeBlanc basically said, sure, a deal would be great, but we're not just rolling over. In other words, Canada's going to defend its interests, politely but unmistakably. This isn't just about tariffs, it's about respect, sovereignty, and refusing to be bullied. So the real question is, will Washington keep doubling down, or will they realize this approach might push Canada further away? Because make no mistake, every word in this standoff is calculated, and both sides know the stakes are higher than they seem.
You heard Ambassador Greer say because Canada retaliated to the initial tariffs all the way back in April when Prime Minister Trudeau was in office, you're paying the price now, even though you have a new government in place. If that's the issue, why not make that concession and pull back?
So Prime Minister Carney, our new Prime Minister, has, we think, built a very business-like, respectful relationship with President Trump. We think that's obviously very important to Canada, and we think to the United States. We're dealing with, take for example, the steel sector in Canada. It's a strategic importance to national security in Canada, as it is for President Trump and the American economy. We now have a situation where there's a 50% tariff. We're the biggest steel export market for the United States.
Right.
We have a 25% tariff. There's a 50% tariff when we want to sell something into the United States. So effectively, we're blocked from doing that. But the national security interest of Canada requires that we have a viable steel and aluminum sector. And my conversations with Secretary Lutnick and others are that therein lies an example where if we do the right work together, we have, Ms. Brennan, the toughest rules of any country dealing with Chinese dumping into Canada. We have melt and pour tracing so that products coming from other countries with Chinese steel can't be dumped into the Canadian market. So we're looking and advancing ideas where we can do that work with the United States, at the same time ensuring that our economy continues to have sectors vital to the economic future of.
Dominic LeBlanc made it clear he left Washington without a trade deal after Trump's sudden 35% tariff threat. Sure, he's disappointed, but he's not backing down. LeBlanc says, Canada will keep talking, but only if the deal truly benefits Canadians. If it doesn't, they'll walk away. It's a calm, yet unmistakable message. Canada won't be strong-armed at the negotiating table.
So we were obviously disappointed by that decision. We believe there's a great deal of common ground between the United States and Canada in terms of building two strong economies that work well together. That's been the history of the 40-year free trade agreement that goes back to President Reagan. We were pleased the United States is respecting the terms of the USMCA agreement. That's vital, we think, to the cost of living and affordability, certainly in the United States. It's true in Canada as well. So we're going to continue to do the work. We left always with a better understanding of the American concerns in the trading relationship. Ambassador Greer, Secretary Lutnick engaged with us in constructive, cordial conversations. So we're prepared to stick around and do the work needed. We think, Ms. Brennan, that the economies of both countries are strengthened when we do things together. The trading relationship between Canada and the United States is unlike other partners. One description which I thought was very apt: we don't sell things to each other as much as we build things together. And that's why it's difficult in this relationship when so much is integrated, but we remain very optimistic.
Well, are there any plans for the two leaders to speak? I saw President Trump said your prime minister called him Thursday and they just never connected. I mean, are tensions that high? And given the changing justification for the tariffs, do you really feel like you're negotiating with the other side in good faith?
Yeah, sure we do. Of course we do. As I say, the conversations have been informative, constructive, and cordial. I would expect the Prime Minister will have a conversation with the President over the next number of days. That's certainly my plan, again, with Secretary Lutnick, recognizing that we think there is an option of striking a deal that will bring down some of these tariffs, provide greater certainty to investment. Ms. Brennan, we passed in Canada our version of the president's One Big Beautiful Bill. It's called the One Canadian Economy Act, which we think will unlock up to $500 billion of investment in Canada for things like pipelines, port infrastructure, mines, all of which offer huge opportunities to American businesses as well. So we think there's a great deal to work on together.
All right, Minister, we'll see if you can get one.
Let's not forget what the U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Pete Hora, has been saying, because it reveals exactly how the Trump camp views Canada right now. Here's your reminder. His comments lay out their stance loud and clear. Watch closely.
The president's team had articulated clearly for as long as I've been in this position, this is a red line. So there was always the hope and the expectation that being in the middle of negotiations, hoping and anticipating that we might have an agreement in 2.5, 3 weeks, that this would be a bad time to implement a whole new element into the discussion. But it happened. There was a response. There was a counter response. And now we're back on track.
You say we're back on track. Do you think the two countries still have a hope of meeting that 30-day deadline? Is there still a possibility of a deal? Because it obviously lost a few days.
I've talked to both sides over the weekend. I think both sides are optimistic that they can get to an agreement within that time frame. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. There's always something that can sidetrack it. But they both want to get to an agreement. They've got qualified staffs. We got smart people in the room that are working on this, that they have the capability, the desire, and the will to get there.
You are being very positive about all of this, talking about things being on track. U.S. President said in his interview with Fox News over the weekend that Canada is, quote, very nasty to deal with. How is Canada nasty, Ambassador?
Well, I think Canada, I want to be very, very positive, because the relationship is a great relationship.
But these are the words of your president.
No, I know. And we're going to be stronger after this than maybe what we are right now. It's going to be an even stronger relationship. But, what is the president thinking about? Oh, they just slapped a brand new tax on us that we've told them for months is an unfair tax. Oh, by the way, you have 11 out of your 13 provinces who ban American products on their shelves. We haven't banned a single Canadian product in the United States. That's a pretty nasty move, okay? You have a number of your provinces have put in provisions into their procurement process that say, oh, if you're an American company, you can't bid. That's pretty nasty.
Yeah, but that was in response to the U.S. slapping major tariffs on this country.
Exactly right now.
So responding is nasty? I'm just trying to get to the heart of this, Ambassador.
Where we are today. Okay, I will accept your characterization of potentially putting tariffs in place. Okay, 90 to 95% of the products that we trade are USMCA compliant, which means there are not tariffs on them.
Yes, I mean, I think we can both acknowledge that the road to get there was pretty complicated, but you've talked about...
We simplified some of those, okay?
Prime Minister Carney seems to understand something that the Trump White House may be underestimating. Canada is holding a lot of cards in this standoff. Public opinion is overwhelmingly on his side. Poll after poll shows 60, 70, and now nearly 80% of Canadians view both the United States and the Trump administration as a threat to Canada. That's a staggering shift in sentiment toward a country that has long been considered a close ally. And Carney knows Canada's leverage goes far beyond public opinion. The country holds close to $1 trillion in U.S. treasuries, a powerful financial position. Canada is also America's largest customer, and the ongoing tourism boycott against the United States is already stinging U.S. businesses. It's become a symbolic rallying cry to the rest of the world. If Canada can stand up to Washington, maybe others should too. Add in a boycott of American goods, and you've got a real pressure point on the U.S. economy. Carney is also watching the economic landscape carefully. U.S. markets are struggling, the latest jobs report is ugly, and the broader system looks weaker. And then there's the legal front. The Federal Circuit Court of Appeals recently heard arguments on whether Trump even has the authority to declare emergency powers to wage this trade war against Canada, Mexico, and other nations. Many believe the court may rule against Trump, which could wipe out the tariffs entirely, something Trump would almost certainly complain about loudly. This gives Carney even more reason to play the long game and wait for the legal process to unfold. To his credit, Carney isn't just rallying his own party. He's been engaging with conservative provincial leaders like Ontario Premier Doug Ford, as well as former conservative prime ministers like Stephen Harper, who in the past were staunchly pro-America. For a Liberal Prime Minister to openly consult conservative voices shows he's seeking a united Canadian front in dealing with Washington. That's a political calculation and a signal to the Trump administration that Canada's response won't be divided along party lines. Up next, you'll hear from Doug Ford himself. Even as a conservative, his take on this U.S.-Canada trade fight might surprise you, and it says a lot about how seriously Ottawa is treating this moment. Watch this.
With President Trump taking direct aim at our economy, his goal is to take every single business out of our country, out of our province, and bring it down to the U.S. But I'll tell you, I will fight like I've never fought before, and we're going to continue fighting against President Trump and his radical views. Do you know what's a problem with President Trump? And, you know, we're united. First of all, I've never seen this country more united, ever, in all my years of being in politics, and it's a great feeling, all provinces, territories, municipalities, and the federal government. But, you know, Prime Minister Carney is trying his best, but this guy will say something one day, and he'll wake up, and the cheese slips off the cracker, and then all of a sudden he goes the other way. And you're thinking, how do you deal with a guy like this? Are we hoping that we can get a deal with zero tariffs? Yes. But I always say how we can kick back, and it's not the American people, kick back at President Trump, is let's start onshoring everything, absolutely everything we possibly can. Like I-beams, those big steel I-beams. I didn't realize we don't make them here until found out during the trade deal. Or the rails that are beautiful, our cars are going to be made, sorry, the street cars are going to be made down the street. We don't make the rails, so we need to start making rails. And start making sure that we make those steel I-beams and aluminum cans. Now, aluminum cans are my favorite. The Coke, the Pepsis, all the other beverages, the Molsons, the Labatt's, the craft brewers, we're the kings of aluminum in Quebec. They ship the aluminum down, 25% tariff. They get printed and formed, 25% back tariffs. So my question was, why aren't we making aluminum cans here? Now we're going to be making aluminum cans. They're going to lose $1 billion worth of business in the U.S. And same with tin cans from DeFasco. Ship it down to the U.S. They get formed. I had a meeting with the big users of the tins. Now we're bringing a line up here. And they're going to be losing out on about 1.3 billion cans just on the tin cans. But we can build anything here. We're an economic powerhouse. You know, folks, we don't have to take a back seat to anyone in the world, and we sure the heck don't have to take a back seat to President Trump. He needs to remember, yes, they're our number one customer, but we're their number one customer. You hear about all these deals he's making, and they're good countries, Japan and Korea. But I'll give you an example. With Japan, he said he made this beautiful deal and everything, and God bless him. But they buy $79 billion worth of products, U.S., off of the U.S. Canada buys $359 billion U.S. off the folks south of the border. 9 million Americans wake up every single morning to produce a widget or a good just for Ontario alone. Those 9 million jobs are in jeopardy right now. We buy more products off the U.S. than Japan, Korea, China, the UK, and France combined. So I wouldn't roll over, and I've told the Prime Minister, do not roll over, hit that guy back as hard as we possibly can, and that's what we need to do. And we can do it. We can build anything here in Canada, absolutely anything. So we're going to win this thing. One way or another, we aren't going to go down and we aren't going to roll over. We'll keep fighting every single day. So thank you for getting me ramped up like this.